So you should have the option in Visual Studio for Mac to scaffold a view with a controller, and that's what we'll do next week, and that's what you'll need for most of the project. Justin, it may build automatically. Mine builds automatically on Windows. I don't know if yours will build automatically on Mac or not. So for example, yes, we do need to build when we added the new method in the controller, but I didn't have to leave it. Okay, thanks, Rebecca. I didn't have to build. This happened automatically. So when you change the controller or your model on a Mac, yes, you will want to click the build menu and build the solution. So we're just going to modify our form just a little bit. So we'll go to our new add category form. Here's how it looks in the browser. We'll just change a few things. Notice the page title here, it matches the name of the view exactly. So it's add category without a space. So maybe we want to add a space here and here. We probably don't need this subheading that says category. It even includes a link back to the index view, which is neat, automatically. So we'll make a few little changes here. So up at the top in the title tag, it says add category in Pascal case. I'm just going to add in a space here. So that'll be for our page title. And on line 8, I'm also going to add a space in here. And then it gives me this H4, gives us this H4 tag on line 9 and 10. On line 10, we don't even need this. So I'm going to get rid of this. We've already got a heading that says add category. So I'm just going to delete line 10. So I'm just putting in a space between the words add and category on lines 4 and 8. I've deleted line 10. That should make my form look a little better, a little cleaner. So now I've got, it's more readable. It says add category and that other little heading here is gone. Now we'll work more with the data and the models next week, but we're going to make one small change to our model, and then we'll jump into our view syntax activity. So I'm going to open up my category model. You'll notice in our form, we have a number of ASP tags that include the word ASP validation. So we've got one on line 14, an ASP validation summary. And then on line 18, we've got validation for ID. And on line 23, I've got ASP validation for name. So .NET MVC will also automatically validate our user inputs and show the user's error messages. So if I go to my category model, which is in my models folder, it's our category.cs file we created last week. What I want to do is set a property on the word name that makes this field required. So the user cannot submit our category form if the name is empty. So I'm just going to put an couple empty lines here between the ID and the name. And then I'm going to add this attribute. If I add in square brackets the word required, this is going to force some validation checking so that the name will always be required to submit this form. Now I do get an error here. It says namespace could not be found. This is a super common error. So Maggie, thank you very much for adding our previous error to the dictionary. So error. I'll add this one as well. The type or namespace, we're going to get this all the time. So what's the solution for this? How do we fix this error? I think we got it last week. Yeah, so there's our code in this case. So the easy fix is put your cursor over top of the underlined code, and I will let Visual Studio add the missing reference. So we need to reference this data annotations library. So if I just click on that, it adds this line. So the solution for this error will be, Diana, this is the specific fix that you've posted. Sometimes it will be adding a different reference. So the solution is mouse over the error, click the code suggestion, and accept the recommended using statement. So this is generally how we fix that error. It should go at the top, should go up here. It has to go above the namespace. It shouldn't be inside. So Justin, if it added that code in here, you should move it. The order of these at the top don't matter, but it should be with the other using statement. So we're going to get this typer namespace not found, and most of the time the solution is adding in the appropriate reference that Visual Studio will recommend to us. So if somebody wants to add that error and solution into our error dictionary, again, then you'll have this for future reference. So I'm going to save that change. And here's also where you see kind of the beauty of the division of MVC. So we've made name a required field in our model. Okay, so if it auto added, it's still, the using statement, as I said, should be at the top of the class. It may work with it being in the middle of the namespace, but it's not advisable. The code shouldn't be there. It should be at the top. So I would cut and paste it up to the top. So we've added this validation rule. We haven't made any changes to the form. All we've changed on the form was the title. We didn't make any change in the actual form code itself. But by making this field required, when I try my form now, if I just leave my form blank and click create, you'll notice that it automatically gives us validation. So it uses the Bootstrap text danger. It's got a span tag here, so it's checking that the input the user gave matches, so any field called ID will automatically get validated. Thanks, Rebecca. Yep, I'm going to need those tips from Mac users because you guys have a bit of a different experience than I have. So the validation is not done in the front end, it's done in the model, but it's triggered in the model, but it is displayed in the view. So again, this saves us coding time. We just add our validation rules here. And we'll do more with validation rules later, but that gives you some idea of what this ASP validation 4 is doing. So, okay. So what we want to do is look at some of these little syntax pieces that come with ASP.NET that we're going to see in our views, especially in some of the code that's auto-generated. Yep, thanks for helping clear that up, Rebecca. So in the week 3 folder in Blackboard, I've got this little activity here. So everybody in the class is in a learning group. I think we used those groups in week 1. If you don't know where to find your group, there should be a link to your group down near the bottom left. So if you click on groups, you'll see if you're in group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you don't know and you can't find it, let me know and I will tell you which group you're in. So here's what I want you to do. So I've created a we're using PowerPoint for this. So there's this activity in week 3 that says more on view syntax. So find your group first and then open up this link in your browser. Please don't download the file and open it in your desktop PowerPoint, or you will lock the whole file and no one will be able to edit it. So what I want you to do, so you may have the option that says edit in your browser. If you get that option, click edit. So we're actually going to try the breakout feature in WebEx in a moment. Farouk, I'll come to your question in a minute when I'm done introducing the activity. So in here, each group has a slide. So if you're in group 1, I've given you a little code sample from ASP.NET View syntax, and I've told you what page you can find this code in. So what I want you to do, and I'm going to put you in breakout rooms in a minute. So you'll have your own WebEx room for about 5 or 10 minutes to discuss this. Is group 1, you're going to use slide 2, and I want you to put in an explanation on this slide of what this code means. How does it work? If you're in group 2, here is your slide. Group 3, group 4, and group 5. So in here, I want you to, as a group, put in an explanation of the code and also add all your names so I know who's participating in the activity. If you're watching the class video later and you're doing the work on your own, then I've created additional slides starting at 7 where you find some other piece of ASP code, put in the code sample, and explain what it is, what the code means, and your name. So if you're working independently, I've set up a bunch of extra slides.
I'm with you.
Okay, so what I'm going to give you about 5 or 10 minutes for this. So each group, someone has their mic on. Would you mind just muting it for the moment, please? Because we can hear you. So as a group, explain the code and put your explanation and your names on your group slides. So we're going to try, stop sharing. I'm going to try the WebEx breakout rooms. So you'll have a private meeting with the other people in your group. It'll take me a few minutes to set up the groups. And then I'll bring us all back to the main WebEx session in about 10 minutes. And I'll ask each group to kind of explain what the code that they got meant. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my sharing and I'll pause the recording until we come back. Okay, so everybody should be back. So what I'm going to ask, we'll maybe start with group 1. If somebody in group 1 can, well, I guess well, it's fine. I'll share my screen. We're all looking at the same thing. So I'm going to open up group 1 slide. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what view data is, just so that everybody else who didn't look at this code can get an understanding. Somebody from group 1, if you want to maybe put your mic on and help us understand this code.
Justin, Emily, you want to go ahead or should I? Okay, so as I said, viewback is a way to pass data from controller to the view. You cannot pass from the view to controller using viewback. There are a few, so there's a few ways to actually pass data from controller to the view. The one that we already learned is a viewback. So this is just another way. This specific view data way is like, I'm not sure can I say this is a dictionary, but it looks like that to me.
Mm-hmm.
So you would basically, as I said, view data, there will be a key and the value. So for example, view data name will be a Peppa. So something like that. You guys want to add something? Justin, Emily?
Yes, Farouk, that's right. So view data, it's very similar to view bag. The difference is the structure. View data is basically a dictionary, so a key and a value. Whereas the view bag could hold objects like our category list, for example. Okay, but they can be used, they're very similar. That's right, Emily. Okay, thanks, Group 1. Very helpful notes. Maybe somebody from Group 2 could give us, maybe put on your mic and give us a bit of an explanation of this code that we have in our login partial view. So what's happening here?
Well, I'm not 100% sure on what it 100% does, but what my theory is that this is for managing and creating users similar to how we were creating categories.
Okay, that's true. Now, the first line is a little different from the other line. So Hung's explanation, you're right. So we can have these using statements. So this is making a reference within a view. So if the view needs this library, we've got using. And yeah, Liam, what you and Balasundari have written, so it's about managing sign in, and it could be either from a third party. What about the keyword inject? That's kind of important. What does that mean?
Does that mean that it's passing through either the actual login credentials or just like the user's not power permissions?
In a way, yes. And Farouk, yeah. So what does it mean to inject something? This is going to be a key term. We're going to use it throughout the course because ASP.NET uses it a lot. You guys will use it a lot in your next semester when you're working with Node.js. Okay.
It's like, oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Is this like, I think it's like we're gonna put the sign-in managers and, user manager into the database.
Okay, we're getting warmer, Hung. So
Okay.
the idea of injecting means when one object requires another object. So for example, this view, this login partial, it needs information about the current user. Yes, Diana, that's what it's about. It's about dependency injection. So at runtime, when a page is going to load and that page needs something, that object can be injected in. It can be provided at runtime. We'll talk more about dependency injection. So it means this view needs these two dependencies. It needs information about the user and information about how they signed in, as Liam said, whether they're signing in through our database or through a third party. So you may just want to make a note, somebody in group 2, about that on this slide, about that keyword inject, because we're going to see it and we're going to use it a lot.
Okay.
In a way, Emily, yeah, but we're talking about entire objects rather than specific values. Okay, thank you. Group 3, so Maggie, Rebecca, Soyoung, and Farouk. Can somebody give us a bit of a mini lesson on what this code means? Pretty simple command in the middle.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but essentially it's a render body is that you can view all of your viewed content that's in your page. You can only have one in your page as well, and it allows you to see all your child views.
Yep, you got it. So we see render body. We won't see it in the views, the individual views we'd creating. We'd see it in these layout templates. So the render body means this is where we would take the individual page content that is using this layout template, and that's exactly where it would appear. Justin, yes, it uses your Google account. It doesn't create a new login. So yes, Farouk, we have the nav bar and footer. That's right. So render body is where the individual page content gets injected into the layout template. Okay, group 4, Rachel and Janelle. Well, each layout page, Emily, would be injected, yes. Okay, Janelle and Rachel, what does this render section mean?
So it's pretty straightforward. It's referring to a section on the page. In this case, the script being the JavaScript, and if it's required or not. So it's false in this section of code.
You got it. So let's have a quick look. If I open up the layout file, down at the bottom here, right before end body, we have this at render section scripts. And then if we view the source, we can see how this gets translated. We don't see that at render, but because we're using validation, it then adds these links to render our script section with those files. Okay, and our last group, Maria and Justin, can you explain the ASP validator attributes and what they mean, as well as the ASP4?
I guess I'll talk. So validation summary, ASP validation summary is a list of all the errors that the form would have. I guess it's just a way to print it out. Model only means it's only using the error parameters that you've set in the model.
Yep.
I think. ASP4 it's an intelligent way to link a certain label or input to the model, so it knows what parameter it's editing. Validation 4 is just like the single version of validation summary. It's only for that one parameter, and that also prints out an error.
Yep. So we've got a choice basically. If we use the validation 4, it works like this, where our validation shows up right here. If we use the validation summary instead of error messages appearing beside each input, this validation summary would list all of the error messages up here above our form. So we can use either one. So we don't see these tags at runtime. So you don't actually see on our name, we don't see any ASP4 tag. That just runs anything that starts with ASP. It gets generated on the server, and it renders these error messages in these span tags that we can see in the form. So our form, when we scaffold the forms, we automatically get this validation code here, which is great. Okay, thanks for those explanations, everybody. And again, if you are doing this lesson asynchronously, if you're working on your own, then you've got additional slides. Please take one of the blank slides, find another piece of new ASP.NET Vue syntax, Razor syntax, paste in the code, and then put your name in and an explanation, just like our other groups have done. Okay. I'm going to try to use these breakout groups, maybe not every week, but often, just because it gives you a chance in a smaller group to talk, so we can have a little more conversation and interaction. And we don't just have one person talking at a time like we do when we're in the main room. You guys okay with the breakout rooms? Did they work out okay for these kind of small activities in class? Okay, good. I find, I know in my grad courses that I'm taking, I find the breakout rooms are kind of useful as well because we don't know each other. I've never met my classmates. So a breakout room is a chance for me to get to talk to people in a small group and us to get to work on small problems like these and get to know each other. So it does take me a few minutes each week to kind of move you into the groups, but we'll probably work regularly in them, just again to break up the session as well. So you're here listening, you're hearing from each other and not just from me. Okay, we're almost done for today. A few quick things we want to do. I do want to grab our logo. So I'm going to grab the logo and I'm going to put it into my header. So go and grab any logo if you want. So I'm going to download our most popular one, Emily's logo. I'm going to download it to my computer. And in my layout file in the header, I want to replace this little get me a game text. I want to replace it with a copy of the logo. That's number one. So I'm going to go to my layout file. And up here on line 14, we've got this class navbar brand. That's a link to our home controller index page. So I'm going to take out the text and I'm going to add in an image instead. So I'm actually just going to go to my download. So I'm going to copy that file and I'm going to browse into my easiest way is in my Solution Explorer here. If I right click my project, I can choose Open in File Explorer, and this will take me to my project directory in Windows or on Mac. So I'm going to go to my File Explorer. Here's my project. So where is it that we should go and save the image? Where would images live inside of this folder? Oh, you can't see the poll. Okay, I will post it. Thanks for letting me know. Hang on just a second. No, we don't need a new folder. We actually have a folder. Yep, Diana, where is the IMG folder? So let me just upload this image. If you want one of the other logos, let me know. I'll post those, repost those as well so you can grab them. Okay, if you refresh week 3, you can download the logo. So in here, we already have an IMG folder. Does anybody remember where it is? It's in one of the folders you can see on my screen. Anybody remember where the static assets go? Which of these folders? Okay, it's actually, the folder is the www root folder, www root. This is like the public folder for static assets. So inside of www root, oh, I apologize, I was wrong. Maria is right. We need to create the IMG folder. I thought we had one, but we just have CSS and JS. I apologize. So I'm going to make a new folder here. Not the first time I was wrong, won't be the last. So now I'm going to paste in my logo here. So you can see in my address bar, inside of www root, we want to create an IMG folder and then paste the logo here. If you want a copy of one of the other logos, let me know. I'll upload those as well to Blackboard. You can use any one you want. So now in my layout, I'm going to replace this text that says get me a game. Oops. We may have to resize it. Okay, it's a bit big. So maybe I'll shrink this down a little bit. But now we've got our logo showing up in our nav bar. So maybe I'll quickly edit it. I'll use good old Paint. Just shrink it down. So one other quick thing I can do, I've added my logo. Maybe I'll change the color of our header. I'll use maybe the yellow in Emily's logo, and I could change the background of our header. Actually, you know what? I think I'll leave that for now. We'll customize more of the look. I know this was something people had asked about. How do we do? We'll customize more of this in a few weeks. I don't want to keep you too long. So I do just want to go over the components you'll need for next week's class in terms of setting up your database. Okay, so now we've got a logo that goes to the home page. We've got our shop now. So it's coming along. Yep. So I've changed what was inside of the link on line 14. This just used to say, get me a game inside this anchor tag. I've replaced the text that said, get me a game. I've replaced it with a link to the logo that Emily created. And I've saved that logo into www.root, and I created a new folder called IMG. The squiggly means start at the root folder. That's the root path.
I think with the logo, maybe you just set the width and height behind on the image tag.
Sure, you can do that as well.
You know, for the quick.
Yeah, it's quicker. I mean, generally it's recommended to size your images at the dimension you want them to appear if they're not going to scale. But yes, absolutely, Hung, that's a good suggestion. That would work too. You could set up any width and height that you wanted to right on the image tag or give it a style. Absolutely, that would be another way of doing it. I just resized mine to 100 by 100. You can do it. You can display it at whatever size you like. Absolutely. Good suggestion.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so that's all we're going to do with the project for today. I'm going to upload it to GitHub. So I'm going to go back to my Team Explorer. And under my changes, I'll say L3 Emily's logo. So I'm going to push those changes. So then I quickly just want to show you what tools you're going to need for next week. So it's a little different for Windows users and for Mac users here. For Windows users, and all the links of what you need are all on Blackboard. So I'm just going to show you where those are. So inside of Weekly Learning and Tools and Resources, down below the Visual Studio, so here's what you need. There's an item that says SQL Server Downloads. If you're on Windows, then you can download SQL. There are two things you need. One is you'd want a local copy of SQL Server. For the in-class video game store, it's going to be faster if you use a local database. You can use Azure, but it doesn't run that quickly. I'm going to use my local database. So you'll want to install SQL Server. Now there's a trick. When you install it, it gives you a whole checklist of components, what you want to install. By default, none of the components are selected. So if you don't choose anything, it won't actually install. It'll install the program, but it won't install the database on your computer. So you have to choose the component. The first component at the top, you can see on my screen, is called the database engine. That's the server, your local server. So when you're installing SQL Server, make sure you check and enable the database engine component, and all the subcomponents underneath should be selected. The second thing you'll want if you're on Windows is a program called SQL Server Management Studio. This is a lot like MySQL Workbench. It allows you to connect to and manage and query any SQL Server database that you're granted access to. And there's a link right here for Microsoft. It's a free program. These two programs are only for Windows users. They will not run on, they're old. They've been around for 20 years. Microsoft's never made versions of these for Mac. If you are using on a Mac, you won't be able to run a local database. You'll have to connect to Azure. So Microsoft has a separate platform for Mac users called Azure Data Studio. So this will allow you to create a database on the Azure platform and connect and manage the database that way. So Mac users are going to use the link I've highlighted, the Azure Data Studio. Windows users should install SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio. Okay? All this stuff is free. You don't have to pay for any of it. So please make sure that you install the appropriate software before next week's class, because I'm going to assume at the start of next week, we're going to start setting up a database. So my assumption is you already have the software that you're going to need to do that. Okay, so please do these things. If you run into problems, you can email me or book an office hours appointment for tomorrow or Thursday, and I can help you with this. Okay. The only other thing for today, so I'll just go back. I will add one of these checklists for each week. Okay, telling you what you need to do. So your quiz should be enabled shortly in a couple minutes. So you have until next Sunday to complete the quiz based on Razor views. You should have created the add category view that we just did together and participated in the PowerPoint conversation and then set up your software. Yep, you can use a JPG or a PNG, whatever you need. Justin, you can set up a database on GoDaddy if you want to, but they're going to charge you for it. So if you want to pay for an SQL Server database on GoDaddy, yes, you're free to do that. But they will charge you. They're not going to give you one for free. Okay, yep, that's fine. If you're using GoDaddy, yes, SQL Server is available through GoDaddy hosting plans. So you can use it if you want to. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so next week, I know a lot of people talked about wanting to see how do we do CRUD? How do we connect to a database? How do we do create, read, update, and delete with ASP.NET? So next week, we're going to set up our database for our video game store, and we're going to use the scaffolding. We're going to set up some models in Visual Studio, and we're going to use the scaffolding tools that will take those models in Visual Studio and convert them, translate them into tables in SQL Server. And then we're going to use the Visual Studio code generation to create controllers and views. Yes, download and install those, Farouk, with the instructions that are in Tools and Resources, correct. Okay, we're bang on 1 o'clock. So if you have no other questions, feel free to go. Have a great week. You can get started setting up your project for assignment 1B. It's due in in 3 weeks, and I will stay in the WebEx room for a little bit if anybody has questions. If you don't have any questions, you're signing off. Then enjoy your week. We'll hope the rain holds off, and I'll see all of you next week.